The hangar smelled like cold metal and old grease. A cluster of seals leaned against a maintenance cart, pretending not to stare at her. One of them flicked his eyes toward her rank tab, then smirked. "That's the weakest O-grade patch I've ever seen." His buddy chuckled, didn't even bother lowering his voice. Nobody saluted. Nobody shifted. It felt like they decided she wasn't worth the oxygen of protocol. The morning was winter grey, that damp coastal kind of cold that clung to the skin instead of sitting on top of it. A distant impact wrench hammered rhythmically 2 bays down. The hangar heater rattled inside its sheet metal frame like something injured and tired. Nothing in that space made warmth, not the light, not the machinery, not the human tone. She stood quietly in that industrial stillness, hands behind her lower back, feet planted chin level, gaze forward. Her gloves were black and old, faded at the tension points. She didn't look up when they laughed. She didn't react to the line about her patch. Her breathing stayed even. The only movement was her left thumb, a slow flex once, like she had been fighting the cold for longer than this building had existed. 2 junior enlisted aircraft maintainers, E3s maybe, walked by with a crate of hydraulic seals. Even they didn't acknowledge her rank tab. They just saw how the seals treated her and followed that social signal. That was the part that burned quietly in the air. Not the insult itself, but the replicating effect of it. The way silent pecking order can spread like smoke. She didn't blink, and that made them uneasy in a microscopic way, though none of them would ever admit it. They were used to people responding, defending, reacting. She didn't defend anything. She didn't correct anything. She simply existed in the space they tried to freeze her out of. On the far wall, a mission-planning smartboard was still powered on from last night's rehearsals. The map overlays glowed faintly, lime coastline traced under faded grease pencil notes. Wind vectors, fishing trawler loops, tide tables. No one was looking at it yet this morning. Too early, too cold, too casual. She turned her head slightly, just enough to study it, and then back again. No one noticed except one petty officer, near the coffee urn, who caught the movement and then shrugged, assuming she was just trying to look relevant. A rolling steel ladder squeaked somewhere near the maintenance bay doors. Someone sneezed, someone coughed, someone slurped burnt thermos coffee and muttered something about the heater still being broken since Tuesday. She stood inside all of it like a fixed point. A retired chief once described moments like this, the slow, unspoken measuring that men do, especially in special operations spaces. The subtle micro-judgments you can't ever call out directly because they're never said loudly enough for command to intervene. This was that moment. This was the kind of moment where people weren't evaluating competence. They were evaluating worth. She simply waited for the briefing room door to open, the exact moment her name would be called, and whatever came next. She didn't fidget as she waited. She didn't warm her hands. She didn't break eye contact with the far wall. She just breathed once, steady, slow, like someone who had been here before. The call finally came from the doorway. Just a short name, spoken flat, nothing ceremonial about it. She stepped away from the maintenance cart without hesitation, no wasted motion, no big posture shift, just forward movement, measured and exact. Inside the smaller briefing room, the air felt different. Less noise, less performance. Fluorescent, lights hummed overhead, pale, anemic glow across laminated charts pinned along the side wall. The projector hadn't been turned on yet. The liaison officer assigned to Intel Liaison, older, silver at the temples, sat with his glasses pushed halfway down his nose, flipping through the printed roster. He looked up when she entered. He didn't smile. He didn't signal anything, but he paused. Just 1 second too long, long enough to register her name in his memory, long enough to realize he had seen those syllables before on an older set of files, in a different unit. From a time most of the men in the other room were still in high school weight rooms, benching for recruiter selfies. She set her notebook on the table. Green, government issue, corners rounded from real field wear, not office rubbing. She opened it silently. Her pen was already inside, already clipped to the spine, already aligned to the exact page. The mocking SEALs drifted in behind her, casual swagger, cups in hand, like they were walking into a routine morning schedule block. They took seats without urgency. Chairs scraped the tile. One of them tossed a folded gum wrapper onto the table, as if this entire briefing was background noise. She didn't even look. She began writing the first line on her page, date, time, abbreviated location string. Very small handwriting, tight, efficient, military handwriting from the old generation, the kind before tablets replaced pencils. The kind learned when men wrote coordinates on waterproof paper under red light while sea spray soaked their forearms. The liaison cleared his throat, but still said nothing about her identity. He didn't need to. The file had already spoken. Her left thumb faltered once when she adjusted the top fold of her notebook. It wasn't dramatic, just a tiny hesitation. Like a moment where the nerve signal didn't fully complete. She corrected without pause, but the micro stutter was there. Real injury always leaves a physical signature, a subtle delay, a micro compensation. She had that. And it wasn't training school cute. It was history. Her eyes moved to the chart pinned. Nearest the wall, the coastal outline of a specific inlet, and there was no curiosity in her expression. No exploration. She didn't discover the features of that terrain. She recognized it, just the way someone recognizes an old scar, not a new picture. She made one tiny pencil mark near a narrow channel cut. A gesture so small, the mocking SEAL didn't even notice. But the older liaison officer saw it. He closed the roster file gently, and he didn't ask her a single question, because the page in his mind had already filled every blank he needed. The projector flickered to life. Slow warm-up cycle, the way old bulbs always did. The room dimmed slightly. The mocking SEALs leaned back, casual, until the first slide loaded. It wasn't the usual training rehearsal overlay they expected. No generic blue-green exercise map. This one came stamped with a classification trailer that made even the gum wrapper SEAL sit forward. A small red square pulsed on the display. A coastal warehouse, not marked as a mock target, marked as live flag. No one spoke. The liaison cleared his throat once, then tapped a pen against the table. "This shouldn't be on our board today," he said. But it is. He didn't need to sell it. The room felt it. That chilled kind of silence, not panic, but recognition that the room temperature had changed. Real mission, real stakes. No rehearsal pre-block, no warm-up. The next slide appeared. Long-range commercial satellite feed. Timestamp not even an hour old. A smudge of hull length, a shape moving along the breakwaters. It looked like just another small skiff, something that could have belonged to any fisherman cleaning nets at dawn. But the metadata flag said otherwise. Packet suspected, component transit. Not named, not explained, but every operator in that room understood what that phrasing meant. Not explosives. Worse. Hardware pieces. The kind that become catastrophic later, not explosive now. A SEAL on the far side of the table exhaled slow. Not fear, responsibility. The liaison drew a thin red track across the overlay. Expected route, docking window less than 90 minutes. Fishing traffic already crowding channel geometry. The inbound craft wasn't stupid. It was using the trawlers as camouflage. Wake masking, prop bloom blending. Someone muttered, "Christ, they're piggybacking the fleet." Another operator leaned forward. "Where's higher on this? Why us?" The liaison answered like a man who already had to repeat this in another room this morning. "Because we're the closest unit with wet access. Because if we route this up, we miss the window. And if we miss the window, someone else inherits hell on the other end." The mocking SEAL, the one with the thermos, now stared at the map. His jaw set slightly. No joke left to deploy. She didn't turn her head toward him. She already knew his shift had begun. She watched the coastline on the screen like she was reacquainting herself with an old enemy rather than studying a stranger's operation. She tapped her pencil once, next to the narrow inlet, the same spot she had marked earlier on the paper chart. Her voice was low, almost neutral. Tide will curl harder on the inside of the breakwater. If they're moving at partial throttle, they'll slide into shadow around the half-moon jetty. The mocking SEAL looked over. It wasn't the sentence that hit him, it was the calm, casual certainty, like she'd seen that exact trick at night under real NVG grain, when the only warning was the change in hull resonance. And in that instant he understood. She wasn't theorizing. She was remembering. The liaison shifted another file forward, unopened, brown craft folder thick, corner stamped in a color nobody ever mistakes. He didn't hand it to the SEALs. He slid it straight to her. The room noticed. He didn't say her name. He didn't say her position. He simply placed the folder in front of her, like it was the most normal chain of custody move in the world. Then he stepped back, and suddenly the silence wasn't dismissive anymore. It was interpretive. The smirking operator, who marked her patch earlier, leaned in half a centimeter. Not recognition. Not apology yet. Just awareness. Finally. She didn't dramatize anything. Didn't hesitate. Just flipped the folder over with one thumb and began reading the tasking authority page. Her finger traced the minimal lines of text. No boilerplate. Use Transcom directive code. Direct chain, 2 levels above combatant command, meaning this op didn't originate anywhere near here. It came from people who normally write assignments in wars, not exercises. She clicked her pen once, wrote one number, a comm frequency. The liaison spoke, quiet now, like the room had shifted into a different jurisdiction, and he just followed. Tasking comes from admiral-level covert acquisition. Naval Special Warfare is providing body, but command authority sits in the office she represents. The thermos SEAL turned his head slowly, eyes narrowing. Office she represents? And the liaison nodded toward her, not like he was revealing anything, but like he was simply confirming what should have been obvious from the moment she walked in. She's not attached to this base. This is her assignment. We're the attached unit. It hit like a wave. All the posture evaporated. The maintenance cart-leaning SEAL, the first one who laughed, straightened his spine out of reflex. Not fully standing at attention, but no longer lounging. Transitions like that don't happen unless a man suddenly remeasures where he sits in the ecosystem. She wrote another line on her pad, then finally spoke. Calmly, eyes still on the map. We're not intercepting the cargo. We're confirming the handover proof of life and identifying who receives it. Don't mistake this for a seizure op. No interdiction unless I say. A few heads snapped toward her. The thermos guy swallowed. Ma'am, who exactly do you work for? She capped her pen, lifted her eyes for the first time since the folder arrived, and without raising her voice, without adding any theater, she answered like she was simply stating a job title in a harmless administrative office, Office of Naval Intelligence, Task Force Alpha, direct reporting to the deputy. CNO, the room froze, not out of shock, out of recalibration. They hadn't underestimated a junior O-grade patch. They'd underestimated the only person in the building who could pull admiral-level directives without touching the local CEO's desk. They left the briefing room without ceremony. No one needed a speech. Schedules dissolved. Egos recalibrated. On the tarmac, night settling into that brittle pre-dawn blue, the team assembled around the twin-engine aircraft like they had done 100 times before. Yet something in the formation was different. They didn't know how to stand in relation to her yet, so they defaulted to neutral professionalism, the safest posture men revert to when hierarchy shifts. She didn't correct anyone. She didn't talk rank. She simply moved. Her steps were small, direct, eyes scanning the fuselage skin, not looking for dents or panel alignment like a mechanic, but scanning the color tone of the metal, residual fuel dye signatures, confirming the aircraft hadn't been rotated for another mission during the night. Subtle check. Expert check. Nobody commented, but the oldest enlisted man on the team noticed that detail. He filed it away. Inside the dim interior, engines warming, she strapped in last. Not because of drama, but because she had been double verifying the manifest lock on the pallet straps. Her fingers traced the tension bar at an angle no one under rank ever notices, the angle that reveals whether a strap was resecured by someone who didn't want others to know they loosened it earlier. She didn't mention it, but she wrote one short mark in her notebook. That was enough. Halfway through flight, the liaison passed a small encrypted device toward her. A simple grey rectangle, no logos. Field issue second-tier gear, the kind that never makes it into recruiting videos. She tapped the surface once. The screen blinked. A single encrypted packet. She didn't open it fully. She opened part of it, just metadata, date stamp, origin key, routing ID, then she closed it. She didn't need the body text yet. The smirking seal, the one who mocked her patch, was sitting 2 buckets down. He wasn't looking at her directly. He looked at the floor between his boots. Respect doesn't always look like eye contact. Sometimes respect is simply not interrupting. Pilot call came through the cabin, short and dry. 10 minutes. She stood, gently steadied herself against the fuselage, and began checking her own equipment. No bravado, no unnecessary snaps, just correct technique. Her left hand hesitated again, the micro-delay from the old injury, and she compensated with the right without altering pace. No drama, no excuse. The thermos seal saw it. And that's what did it. That subtle adjustment told him everything he needed to know. Somebody who lived through something bad and still returned to a job with no applause. He didn't speak, but his shoulders eased. In special operations, that silence is the first step of respect. They weren't convinced because of the office she represented. They were convinced because she knew the little things that only real scars teach. The aircraft began its descent, rough, like turbulence had a personal grievance with them. Nobody asked her to clarify authority again. She didn't need to talk anymore. She had already proven the deeper truth, not through introduction, but through the way she moved in the small details. Proof earned. The wheels slammed the dirt strip harder than planned, the kind of landing where teeth click and shoulder straps bite. Dust swarmed the windows. Engines spooled down but didn't fully idle. They were keeping them hot for a fast egress. The rear ramp dropped. No prep speech, no warm-up, just cold earth. Night insects. Somewhere far, diesel knock. She was first off the ramp, not sprinting. Deliberate pace, posture low, rifle angled not forward but slightly down, because she wasn't hunting a silhouette. She was hunting the hand-off human behavior, the gesture set of someone who knows he's exchanging something lethal but believes he'll get away with it. The intel said 2 men. There were 4. Close to the tree line, their breath fogged in the damp air. Her left hand twitched again, the micro-lag, but she braced the foregrip with the right and moved another 2 steps forward. The team spread. No dramatic hand signals, no wordy choreography, just muscle memory, a glint. A handoff case, aluminum, too small to be anything benign. They weren't exchanging weapons. They were transferring coordinates. She raised her rifle, small adjustment, nothing theatrical. One of the targets saw movement, half shouted, reached. Gunfire snapped the quiet in short, controlled bursts. Everything went fast. Short sentences, shorter actions. She didn't freeze. She pivoted left, let recoil drive the barrel line. 2-round controlled fire, center mass. The first hostile fell hard. She didn't celebrate. She didn't check. She simply shifted vector. Next threat, next angle. The mocking seal, the one who insulted her rank, moved up her flank and saw it clearly. She wasn't brave. She was professional. She was operating at the tempo of a woman who had done this before, when no one clapped afterward. The last gunman tried to drag the case behind a tree. Panic posture, sloppy grip. She fired once, not to kill, to break the elbow angle. He screamed. Case dropped. She closed distance, boots hitting wet soil, grabbed the guy's collar, pinned him with weight distribution that came from actual combatives training, not gym talk. "Don't move," she said, low, as calm as the first time she clicked her pen in the briefing room. He didn't. The case was secured. The proof of life was intact, and every hostile still breathing was zip-tied inside 90 seconds. Extraction was silent. No cheers on the ramp. No fist bumps. Aircraft lifted. Dust fell away. Cabin lights dimmed into that blue half-glow. The thermos seal finally looked at her straight on. He didn't clear his throat, didn't apologize in some cinematic monologue. He just said, quiet, direct, "Ma'am, you led that clean." She nodded once, not pride, not vindication, just acknowledgement of work done. Then she opened her notebook, wrote one final notation, closed it, and stared at nothing, at the dark outside the window, like someone who had seen 1,000 small wars that never made the news, and carried each one like a private scar that didn't require witness to matter. Respect didn't need volume, it just needed truth. When they landed back at the coastal airfield, morning hadn't fully committed yet, the horizon still undecided between night and light. A thin line of cobalt drifted above the water, and the salt in the air felt sharper than before. The hangar they had departed from just hours earlier looked exactly the same. Same cold metal smell, same grease stains, as if the universe didn't bother. Updating scenery for human transformation. But the men walked differently, and the silence that followed. Them wasn't hostile this time. It was the God born from recalibrated understanding. No one crowded her. No one small-talked the walk back in. Boots just clipped across concrete in quiet cadence until the automatic doors hissed open and released them into the quieter interior. A low hum from distant compressors. The flicker of an old fluorescent ballast. The same building. Different hierarchy. She peeled her gloves off slowly. The way someone who had done this their entire adult life managed decompression. Her left hand tremored once when she unbuckled her rig, that small involuntary stutter that had never fully healed. But this time, the nearest SEAL didn't pretend not to notice. He didn't stare either. He just treated it as truth. The type earned through reality, not stories. Inside the briefing room again, same chairs, same wall charts. The liaison waited. He didn't greet her. He simply slid a small paper envelope across the table, the kind Intel uses when data goes back up the chain, not sideways. She didn't open it. She already knew what was inside. Final custody chain, authentication token, her signature block, she signed without commentary, date, time identifier. The mocking operator, the one who'd flicked his eyes at her rank tab at the beginning, came forward, slowly, no swagger. Just a man who had seen something he couldn't ridicule or minimize anymore. He stood almost formally, not rigid but respectfully aligned. He didn't say much, just the only sentence that mattered. You were right. She didn't smile. She didn't soften. She didn't turn it into a victory lap. She simply answered with the most naval intelligence sentence a person could ever say after an operation that had gone clean, controlled, and ugly in all the quiet little ways that define real modern conflict. It was necessary, and that was that. She closed her notebook carefully, 2 fingers guiding the last page fold flat. Then she slid it into her bag. Same green canvas, corners worn, stitching faintly frayed at the edge. No applause. No handshake parade. No ceremony. Just a room full of men who now understood they had been standing next to someone who lived the things they only rehearsed. When she stepped out of the building and the cool morning air hit her, she paused once, just long enough for the breeze off the water to brush the loose hairs near her temple, and exhaled through her nose. A slow, controlled release. Respect didn't arrive because of rank printed on fabric. Respect arrived because of what she did when it mattered. And for someone built by old scars, real ones, the kind never posted on a wall, that was the only kind that counted.